Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Angri Mastakama Purnas Tulasi Navadamapi Komalai Sarvagatreshu Bhuri Punyavadarpatai. Today we are reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 10, Chapter 13, entitled Brahma Stealing the Boys and Calves. Text 49. Lord Brahma, who in his role as the secondary creator of the entire universe, he thought that he had seen everything. But in today's verse, he realizes he's really never seen anything. That is the beginning of our real ability to comprehend the absolute truth, or Krishna. As long as we think that we know something, we are limited by that conception. But in spiritual matters, the more we know, the more we understand how much we do not know. In material consciousness, the quantity of knowledge, the quantity of acquisition, in whatever field it may be, it brings a sense of false pride. It infatuates the ahankar, the ego. We think, I have this much, I have more than you. And when we think we have more than someone, we naturally become arrogant. And if somebody has more than us, we become envious. That is material psychology. But spiritual psychology is the opposite. The more knowledge of Krishna we have, the more we understand that Krishna is unlimited. And we become more and more humbled by that. And similarly, material nature, or for that matter, any of Krishna's energies, Parasya Shaktir Vivadaiva Shruvate. To the degree we actually understand, not just a superficial understanding, we actually are beginning to understand the energies of Krishna, material existence. We become more and more humble because all Krishna's energies are unlimited. Even to the degree we know ourself, the Atma, the soul, according to the Upanishads, when it's within this material world, it takes on the size of 1/10,000th the size of a tip of a single hair. Now after class, if you want, you could analyze the tip of a hair. And 1/10,000th that size. It's impossible to calculate such smallness. What incredible technology. It's like these days, technology is trying to make things very small. They're always trying to make their cellular phones smaller and thinner and smaller and thinner. And these little machines this big could contain 50,000 songs. Yes. When I was a boy, we used to have these records made out of vinyl plastic. They were about, some were this big, some were this big. And you had to have big shelves to keep us, just 100 such records took a big, 50,000, your whole house would be covered. And now people have their 50,000 in a little thing like this. So this is considered advanced technology, to put a lot of things in some little space. Even in my little life, computers, they were practically unheard of. One computer would take up at least a full room of a house. And now, the little children are carrying them in their lunchbox. And they have about 1,000 times more information than they used to have in that big room. And they work faster too. So we're considering, to take a lot of information and bring it down into something very, very, very small, or something that can perform powerful activities and make it so small. That's considered incredible technology. Well, from the beginning of creation, look at this technology. The Atma, the soul, is 1/10,000th the size of the tip of a hair. How many songs could they fit in something that big? But yet that one little 10,000th the size of the tip of the hair is the person who's making all the technology. Even that sound was coming from something 1/10,000. Building, these little jivas are building skyscrapers, building cities, building computers, building technology. And those little jivas are the ones who sing every one of those 50,000 songs. And it's within this body. It can see and can hear and can taste and can smell and can love and can touch, can feel. You see, the technology that we create has no feeling. It could do things, but it can't. No technology of matter has the power to love, has the power to feel. But this technology of the Atma could feel, could love, and could activate the entire material energy. So any of Krishna's energies are inconceivable. Krishna says some people, in the Gita, some people see the soul as amazing, some people talk about the soul as amazing, some people understand the soul is amazing, but nobody could really, we can't even understand, that's who we are. We can't understand ourselves, the power of that soul. It's eternal. Time is destroying everything, second by second by second. But time can have no influence on the soul. And there's unlimited souls. It's inconceivable. And this little Atma, the real you who's within this body, we can't even understand this body. Medicine, doctors, physicists, they can understand to a certain extent. But it's incredible how it works and why it works. Just like you've been living in your body since you're born, yes? How many hairs do you have? How many cells do you have? What's really happening in all of your little organs? The heart's beating, and what do we know? Are we like deliberately programming the heart to beat like that? It's just doing. Even if our minds are completely preoccupied with something else. It's inconceivable how it works. What to speak of nature? We have our technology, we have our militaries, we have our universities. The United States of America is scientifically, technologically, militaristically, politically, such a powerful nation. And just recently, this Hurricane Sandy. She's coming from the tropics, and she happened to meet a winter storm. Maybe, I don't know if he was male or female. Maybe it was George or something, I don't know. But Sandy and this other storm, they met. So you have a tropical storm and a winter storm merging together. It's very rare. And what does America do? All their nuclear arsenal was of no value. All their bombs and their weapons were no value. All they learned in colleges, the greatest pundits and scholars in the greatest universities in the world, the most powerful politicians, all they could do is tell everyone, get out. That's all they can do. Get out. There's nothing we could do. And so many tens and billions of dollars worth of damage. And how did it happen? Just the mixture of some winds. Just material nature is inconceivable. Every aspect of material nature is inconceivable. Everything in creation, if we analyze it honestly, is inconceivable to the human intelligence. But when we see things on a very, very superficial level, the more we know about something, the more we think we know. actually understanding it properly, the more we know, the more we understand we don't know. And we become humble. And our search for knowledge is with that humility, not with that ego. And in this story we find on the highest level, Lord Brahma. Sometimes we think because we get old, we're getting wise. When we're little children, like 6, 7 years old, if someone's like 12 years old, we think they must be so wise. They've been around so long. And as we get older and older, we get in our 50s and our 60s and our 70s and our 80s and maybe our 90s and then in our hundreds. But usually by that time, you don't know anything much. But experience does bring wisdom if we have, a proper disposition. It could perpetuate ignorance too. But here we find Lord Brahma. During this time when Krishna appears, Brahma is, by his calculation, about 50 years old. Yes? Now 50 years by Brahma's time is 1/2 of 311 trillion. So that means he's about 1.5 trillion years old. So he has a lot of experience. And he's a guru. And he's father for so many. And obviously he thinks, I've seen everything. And by his own incredible powers, he was thinking he was kidnapping all of Krishna's little friends and his little calves. He put them to sleep in a cave. They were sleeping. And then he came back just a moment later, which is a year by earthly calculation, just to see what kind of confusion he created. It's incredible how people were proud that we could create confusion. I was speaking to somebody and they went to a restaurant with this one lady. She was an elderly lady. And the person who brings the food, she kept saying, "This is cold, heat it up. This doesn't have enough of this spice, bring more of this spice." And he kept doing that. And somebody at the table said, "Why do you keep, making the waitress go back and forth and back and forth?" And she said, "Because I'm getting old and I want to exert my authority. I can't do it anywhere else." So you see, people like to feel like they have some influence in some small way, in some big way. So Brahma, he came to see what influence he created. And he saw everything was exactly as he left it before. Every one of the little calves was jumping around and eating grasses and playing with each other, and all the cowherd boys were playing games. They would take a stone and throw it up at a tree, and a fruit would come down when they would hit the fruit, and then they would all be clapping and laughing, and they would catch the fruit, and they'd start playing with the fruit with all kinds of ball games. And Brahma saw Everything's the same. Then he went back to the cave, and he could do it really fast. He looked back at the cave, and everybody was sleeping. Then he came back, and everybody was playing. He was thinking, how is this happening? Is Krishna doing this? Maybe Krishna is... Maybe when I go there, he puts the children back in the cave, and when I come here, he takes them all out and makes them play again. And then when I go there, he puts them back to sleep. But that's not possible. But is it possible? What's happening? And he started speculating in so many ways. How are they here and how are they there? Are there two sets? If there are two sets of children, how did that come about? And which are the real ones and which are the false ones? And when he came to the culmination of not understanding what's going on, we come to today's verse. Every one of the children become Narayan, the form of Vishnu. Every calf, all these little, sweet little jumping calves, he sees, they all become Lord Vishnu, the absolute truth, the cause of all causes. And the description is given. They have beautiful helmets, ornaments, holding the conch shell, the club, the disc, the lotus flower. And if that's not enough, they're so beautiful. But there's unlimited living beings, devas and rishis around each one of these forms, singing hymns and worshiping them. So this is the beginning of Brahma's real awakening in this story. He's understanding how much I do not know. Today is the disappearance day of the great Acharya Narottam Das Thakur. And he is such an example of this principle. We could speak for hours and days and weeks and months and years and decades and centuries and millenniums and yugas about great saints like Narottam Das Thakur. Kalpas. But here he was, and when we study his songs, he was just revealing the deepest spiritual emotions, harmonized with the most profound, deepest philosophical knowledge, presented with unlimited love and compassion. He wrote songs in such a way that the most erudite scholars, their hearts would melt. And the simplest, uneducated people in little villages, they would have the exact same experience. There was the greatest scholar of the time. His name was Ganga Narayan Chakravarti. He was a Brahmin from a very high society of knowledge. Such people don't exist in today's world. He was so thoroughly pious. And at the same time, he had memorized entire bodies of scriptures. And he understood them so deeply, and he could speak on them with such profound accuracy. He was celebrated by the whole Brahmin community as the greatest of the scholars. and of the highest birth. And meanwhile, Narottam Das Thakur, he was born in a Kayastha family, which was considered by many to be like a Shudra. So he was of a lower birth. And many people in the Brahmin community seriously resented that a person of such a low class could be teaching such high knowledge. They didn't believe he could possibly understand it. And not only that, but there were Brahmins coming to him. He was initiating them. They were considering this to be so dangerous to the future of the world. They had plots to kill him. They had plots to disgrace him, to ruin his name. And the most celebrated of all their people was Ganga Narayan. So Ganga Narayan heard about these two little children. What was Hariram and Ram Krishna and Hariram, and how they were sons of a very, very great Brahmin himself. And their father, for the Durga Puja, sent the sons to buy a whole herd of little goats to come back, bring home, and then every day they would sacrifice those goats to the goddess. So they had their goats, they were herding them, and Narottam Das Thakur was with Ramchandra Kaviraj. And they were just talking philosophy to themselves in such a way that the children could hear them. And the children were really fascinated by this, so they came and started asking questions, and Narottam Das Thakur and Ramchandra Kaviraj spoke to them about bhakti, about seeing Krishna in our own hearts and seeing a part of Krishna in the heart of every living being. And they were speaking with such beautiful philosophy that the children were not only charmed by what they heard, but they just had never seen such wonderful, beautiful, compassionate people as these two men. So they let all their goats free. And then they came back to Narottam's Keturi Gram in his temple, and they studied under him for some time. And then they took initiation one took initiation from Ramchandra Kaviraj, the other took initiation from Narottam Das Thakur. And just in a matter of a week or two, they were studying under them, they had gained so much knowledge and realization. And Narottam Das Thakur said, your father must be waiting for you. Maybe you should go home. No. But they went home. And the father was furious. Now, he was a learned scholar. And he was very powerful too, very influential. Where have you been? So we have a guru now. Ramchandra Kaviraj and Narottam Das Thakur. What guru? Narottam is that idiot person, fool, that rascal, that nonsense. He's destroying our whole culture. He's contaminating. He's low-born. You took initiation from him. This is a disgrace to our entire family. You will go to hell for this. And they just looked at their father and said, explain to us, what was the problem? And he tried to explain, and they defeated him. He was very angry. So he brought some of the biggest scholars of the area to have a debate with these two little children. And the children defeated all of them. This was becoming desperate. This was become like this, for him this was like a national emergency. So he called for the greatest Brahmin scholar, I think his name was Murari or something. He called him from Mithila. This man was an undefeated Digvijaya, expert at debate. He traveled all around conquering people. And the little children, they defeated him. By this time, the father was on the verge of committing suicide. He was so frustrated. But their uncle secretly went to get initiated by Narottam. Actually, the uncle asked them to initiate him. Meanwhile, as this was happening, Ganga Narayan Chakravarti, from a distance, he was watching all this happening. Who is this Narottam Das Thakur? I'm hearing nothing but blasphemous, horrible, terrible things against him. There's so many accusations about him that this community is creating. But just by living with him for a few days, these two little children, he was watching the children. Not only did they have the knowledge and the wisdom, practical wisdom, to defeat the world champion debate competitor, but they were so humble and they were so gentle and so respectful to everyone. And at the same time, they were totally fearless. Just by seeing the children, Ganga Narayan Chakravarti's heart was completely transformed. He yearned to meet Narottam Das Thakur. And he was crying and praying, will I ever get to meet such a person who has influenced these children in this way? And he had a dream. And Narottam Das Thakur appeared to him in a dream. He said, go to bathe in the Ganga tomorrow and I will come. So he went to bathe and he went to the Ganga, and coming over a hill was Ramchandra Kaviraj and Narottam Das Thakur. And he took initiation. He became one of his most loyal, humble, dedicated followers for the rest of his life. And there's that famous story of there was a king. I think his name is Narasingha Raj. And so many of the Brahmins, the leaders of this community, were complaining against the king. You are responsible for protecting the dharma of your state. You must arrest and punish Narottam Das Thakur. Because he's not a Brahmin and he's becoming a guru of so many people. This cannot be tolerated. You must do something about him. So the king, he said, well, why don't we invite him to our kingdom and you can have a debate with him. You can bring the biggest, best scholars to a debate with him, and he will, and if he wins, then you have to accept him. And if you win, then I'll have to punish him. So they said, yes, of course. And they called this Rup Kaviraj, who was really a powerful person. And Narottam Das Thakur got this invitation. And Ganga Narayan Chakravarti and Ramchandra Kaviraj, they were thinking, why should we waste our Guru Maharaj's time with all this? We should go settle this. So they made a plan. They disguised themselves. One was just wearing very simple clothes, just looked like a very simple little merchant. And they put a little cloth down on the ground on the side of the road. And one was selling clay pots, and the other was selling betel nuts. And they were just making clay pots and making betel nuts, making whatever you make with betel nuts. And then this royal procession. The king was there. All the great scholars, Rup Kaviraj, they were all there. And one of the Brahmin gurus told one of his followers, go buy us some betel nuts and some clay pots. Look at those people there. So their students were also very learned. They ran over and they asked, what are the price of the betel nuts? And these two men, they quoted the price in perfect Sanskrit. Now in Bengal in those days, only the great Brahmins spoke Sanskrit. They asked, how do little merchants like you? They looked at him very egoistically, disdainfully. How useless merchants like you speak Sanskrit? And they started explaining how it's not a matter of how you're born, it's a matter of your quality. The Gita teaches guna karma, according to the nature of one's activities and the qualities one's possessed. It's not based on simply birth, of what our actual position and role is. So how do you know all these things? They said, we learned this from our guru, Narottam Das Thakur. So they went back and told their teachers, and their teachers went and had a big debate with them. They started blaspheming Narottam Das Thakur in perfect Sanskrit. They completely defeated the teachers. They were absolutely silent. And the king was watching, and he told Rup Kaviraj, he said, if I were you, if this is what his betel nut selling disciples can do, they could completely defeat in argument with realization and wisdom even your greatest teachers. Soon their guru, Narottam, is going to come. I think we should just surrender to him. And they did. They all surrendered to Narottam Das Thakur. And when we read Narottam Das Thakur's songs, he's singing about how he has no love. He has no knowledge. Patita pavana hetu tava avatara mosamo patita prabhu na paibeya. He's singing about Lord Chaitanya, that you have come to deliver the most fallen people. And if you search the entire creation, you will not find anyone who is more unfortunate, who is more fallen than me. So therefore my claim should be first. You are Patita Pavana avatar. You've descended to deliver the most fallen. I'm the most fallen, so please have mercy on me. And Srila Prabhupada, he explains, Narottam Das Thakur is not just saying this in a poetic way. He